Well, with that, we'll move right into your presentation, Frank.
Thank you. I wanted to reinforce Vernon. I also wanted to tell Leslie that the assumption of liberal or progressive people being very nice has not been my total experience. Along with Bob Lamb and David Promental, when we were running for the Sierra Club board, and vicious attacks. And ironically, one time I was testifying for Congress, Congressman Cannon was saying, well, you understand that those racists are running for the Sierra Club board. And I said, well, Congress, you know you're talking about me. Oh, no, I didn't know, Dr. Mark. And I pointed out that I was nominated for the Sierra Club board by the deputy director of the National NAACP, you know. And the ad hominem attacks were that, well, if it wasn't you, then some folks who were supporting you and so forth and you. So let's not be assumed that the other side, Ben can really
good for you, Frank. I'm really glad you said what you just did.
Well, you even probably have greater horror stories, Ben. I also wanted to reinforce what Ben said too about this morning about good people who really don't want to face certain truths about immigration. And that they're in denial. And I think that one of the points of why I wanted to talk today about immigration and inevitably racial issues in immigration as well as economic issues is that the impact on the quality of life for Americans. One of the things I also wanted to tell Leslie is that people who think that they're very good and see only part of the immigration total morality. They see it the immigrant side, but they do not value the impact on many Americans, especially Americans that we don't like. When we see high immigration and clear evidence that it's negatively impacted American life, we don't ask the why question. Why would we continue to do this? So I want to also address some of the why questions. One of them, and I'm sorry, I need to apologize to all of you, because if you're liberal and conservative, you really look at this question, it's uncomfortable when we really look at American history. On the liberal side of the legend, the assumption is that immigrants are really more valued than Americans. The assumption of the model minority, et cetera, et cetera. And on the conservative side, there's also the assumption that these are hardworking, much more hardworking than Americans. And on both sides is the critical assumption that if folks like me and my ancestors have been here in America for hundreds of years and we haven't made the American dream, then something is wrong with us. We're in constant denial of the structural factors in American society that have gone on and continue to have a negative effect that are exacerbated by American immigration. And I'll talk about some of those. I basically want to make a few points. What are some of these things that are in denial? One of the things that we're in denial is that America needs low-skilled workers, you know. A second thing that we're in denial, and we hear the assumption that, I have to also talk about another congressional thing about why we're in denial. This last March, when I testified for the Judiciary Committee, Sheila Jackson Lee didn't say to me what she'd said previous 3 times, that, we're all children of immigrants, and I had to point out to her that no way that my ancestors, came over could be considered immigration, but that was but you see, there's this positive, and it's a good thing. I'm not saying that that's wrong. That's one of the things of our strength, but we add up that these lead to what, in fact, unconscious and unquestioned immigrant preferences over our own citizens, the devaluation of our own citizens, the assumption that our own something is wrong with them, especially when you see the media, the black stereotypes in the media, the poor white trash stereotypes, that somehow that these poor immigrants we can identify with, or who are worthy, but we American citizens who've been hit by structural things for centuries, something's wrong with us. We haven't made the effort, or it's something is wrong, something is wrong with us. And so you have immigrant preferences. Vernon was mentioning it, and he did a very good job, so I won't even point out of how in the Great Recession, how immigrants come in, millions of guys are getting jobs while 6 million Americans are being laid off, basically because immigrants are the more vulnerable and more desirable from an employer's standpoint. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to say, oh, no, immigrants are more desirable than American citizens. But we know we act on that, and we don't question it on both parts of the political spectrum. And it really bugs me, I guess, as an African American, that when we see immigrants getting employment preferences in the low-wage jobs or not, when African Americans couldn't get those jobs in the past because allegedly we were not meritorious. We didn't have the educational skills. Or we had Ebonics, we know how to speak, so we couldn't get here, we couldn't do it. So you have, in contrast, you have immigrants who have no English language skills, less education, sometimes, from some of the immigrant countries especially, and I'm not knocking them. I mean, hey, we're acting in their own interests, but yet we sort of forgotten that we supposedly had a merit system here, that this wasn't supposed to happen, that we're going to pick the best educated, and we're going to pick the ones who have great English skills and diction and so forth and so forth. So, but this really happens. A third thing that we don't want to talk about. That's reality, is that immigrant status trumps citizenship status. This really bugs me. The non-enforcement of laws to protect citizens, and as a black American, the kind of enforcement of laws that we have in our structural history in this country, including to the present. I hope many of you will read Michelle Alexander's book called The New Jim Crow, which talks about mass incarceration that's been based on the selective prosecution of the laws. It didn't go over pretty well when I gave my 50th reunion lecture at Colgate, and I pointed out one of the things that could help bring equality in this country is that you enforce the drug laws on Colgate's campuses the way they are in central Dallas or central New York and so forth. I didn't go over it too well, but folks got the point. And conversely, the non-enforcement of laws. Speaking of the enforcement of laws, as I pointed out, we black folks have had laws enforced against us that weren't even laws, that cost us our lives. Lynches. This history. This is part of our history. You see, it's not nice to talk about this, because it makes everybody feel uncomfortable, regardless of the political spectrum. But this is part of the immigration issue, too, that laws are not, when immigrants get preferential trumping citizenship, and we don't question it. And, it's a normal part of things. It's just, that's the way it goes. We don't even question that. A fourth thing is that really bothers me, too, is the false analogies of immigrant status with civil rights status. The analogies is as false as it could be between being citizen in a country and not being able to force the laws or have laws that are enforced against citizens that are biased, in contrast to, if we talk illegal folks, entering countries without permission and having the benefit of laws not being enforced either at entry or an internal. The assumption, too, that preferences in the American labor market. When was the last time I talked to my folks? When do we black folks ever have preferences in the American labor market? Affirmative action? I don't know. Look at this. I don't want to give you the statistics, but after years of affirmative action, you see where we are on the wealth scale, and we're still at 52% of white income. So, where is it that black folks have benefited from laws that they would that were not enforced with them. And then the final, I'll be very brief, is that we really, in immigration, don't talk about the true racism in American immigration policy. You know, the racism, everyone says, oh, it's because you don't want the country to become more brown or blah, or so forth, so forth. But the real racism in immigration policy is the fact that America has favored immigrants over African Americans and maybe some other Americans, especially African Americans, right from the get-go, right from the early history, from the indentured servitude and slavery, the fact that black folks were not able to benefit as immigrants were from the frontiers, from the Homestead Act, from all of those. Vernon was trying to struggle with the labor unions. Oh, hey, we black folks tried to get to the labor unions, and they never opened up for us like they're doing now for immigrants. And we can just go on for the federal programs, the FHAs, where we didn't get the opportunities, the red lines. I don't need to, you know your history. The point is that we don't want to think that we have really reinforced things for our non-citizens over our own citizens. And, you know, until we do this, we don't have a fair immigration debate. Basically because, and obviously it's because it makes us uncomfortable. We've been repressing that history. We think we got a black president, and I say he's a black president when he does the right things, and he's half white when he doesn't. But, you know, as if that is somehow the be-all, end-all. And then he embarrasses black folks by telling us to stop crying when we haven't made any demands. So the point, dear friends, and I'll end with this, is that let's have a true immigration policy debate. Let's realize the real point that race has played. Let's recognize that we have traditions from our past that doesn't value all of us as citizens, and that is why, folks, we have high immigration when we have a deteriorating American quality of life.